Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I do construction and have been doing my own yard maintenance for years. My property is about 2 acres with lots of trees and garden space, so every spring I do a major cleanup. My friend and I have this tradition where we help each other with our spring cleanups, one weekend at my place, the next at his. We've been doing this for about 5 years now. My neighbors are a real piece of work. They live in the house next to mine with the woman's grandparents. They're both in their 20s but act like teenagers. Their car is this beat-up Chevy Cavalier that barely runs and smokes like a chimney. Every time they drive by, you can see the thick black smoke pouring out of the exhaust. My friend and I always joke about how that car burns more oil than gas. So this particular spring, I was getting ready for cleanup weekend. I spent Friday evening after work preparing all my tools. I sharpened my chainsaw chains, cleaned the lawnmower blade, and mixed up fresh gas with 2-cycle oil for my equipment. I had 3 gas cans, one with regular gas, one with mixed gas for the chainsaw, and one empty backup. I finished up around 10 that night and put everything away in my shed. Saturday morning my friend showed up at 8 with coffee and biscuits. We were sitting on his truck tailgate eating breakfast when my neighbors drove by in their smoking car. The thing was belching out even more smoke than usual. My friend made a joke about how they probably go to the gas station and fill up with oil and check the gas level instead of the other way around. I laughed and said that thing was gonna die any day now. We had a good laugh and finished breakfast. Then we headed to my shed to get the tools out and start working. That's when I discovered all 3 of my gas cans were missing, just gone. The shed wasn't locked, but who steals gas cans from someone's property? That it hit me why their car was smoking so badly that morning. They had stolen my gas and were running their car on mixed gas with 2-cycle oil. The idiots didn't know the difference. I was furious. Those cans cost me good money, and now I had to go buy new ones plus more gas and oil just to get my work done. My friend and I drove to the hardware store and spent over $100 replacing everything. When we got back, we saw the neighbors drive by several times, but their car was running even worse than before. The next weekend we did the cleanup at my friend's place. A couple weeks later we had a family dinner at my wife's grandparents' house. These are the same grandparents my neighbors live with. After dinner, most people had left and I was having a beer with my wife's grandfather when I needed to use the bathroom. On my way back, I spotted something in their garage. 2 gas cans with very distinctive paint markings. I knew those cans immediately because I had painted them myself with bright orange paint so I could spot them easily. I asked the grandfather where those gas cans came from. He told me the kids had left them there last week and said they found them somewhere. I explained that those were actually mine and had been stolen from my shed a few weeks ago. I showed him the paint marks and told him what happened. He was embarrassed and told me to take them. I loaded both cans into my truck, but I was still angry. Every time I saw that smoking car drive by, it reminded me of what they did. That's when I came up with my plan. I went to the gas station and bought several gallons of regular gas, several gallons of diesel fuel, and some motor oil. I mixed it all together in my new 6-gallon gas can. It was a nasty mixture that would run an engine for a while, but eventually caused serious problems. The next evening I filled my lawnmower with clean gas and cut my grass, making sure the neighbors could see me using the equipment. Then I put everything away but deliberately left that can of bad gas sitting outside my shed where it would be easy to spot. I went to work the next morning and didn't think about it until I got home. The can was gone. My wife told me she watched the neighbors take it during the day. She also said their car was running even worse than before, not just smoking but sputtering and making terrible noises. About an hour later, there was a knock on my door. It was the neighbors. The woman asked if I could help them because their car broke down on the main road and wouldn't start. Her boyfriend added that they needed someone to look at it and maybe tow it home if I could. I told them I'd had a long day and had a terrible headache, so maybe I could help tomorrow. The woman said they couldn't leave it there overnight because they didn't have insurance. I told them that was tough luck and they should have thought about that before they stole my gas cans. They tried to deny it, but I cut them off. I told them I had found my cans in their grandparents' garage and knew they had taken them. They left without another word. Sure enough, the highway patrol found their abandoned car and had it towed. It cost them $500 to get it out of impound, plus they needed current registration and insurance. The car wasn't worth that much, so they just let it go. About a month later, their church pastor gave them an old Ford Taurus. It was in decent shape and ran well. For a few weeks, they drove it around without problems. But I wasn't done with them yet. I prepared another batch of my special gas mixture and left it out where they could see it. Sure enough, they took the bait again. This time, it took about a month before the engine seized up completely. The car died right in their grandparents' driveway. They had to scrap that one too. Lucky for them, their tax refund came in around the same time. They used the money to buy a nice Ford F-150 truck. It was probably the best vehicle they'd ever owned. But old habits die hard. Within a few weeks, I caught them eyeing my gas cans again. I set up another trap with my special mixture. They took it, and soon their truck was smoking just like their old car. This time, they learned their lesson. They took the truck to a real mechanic who figured out what was wrong. The mechanic told them someone had been putting contaminated fuel in their tank. It cost them $1,500 to get the engine cleaned out and repaired. After that, they never touched my gas cans again. The mechanic's bill apparently taught them that stealing gas was an expensive habit. They started buying their own fuel like normal people. I love pushing boundaries. Rock climbing, mountain biking, whitewater rafting. If it gets my heart pumping, I'm all for it. My friends always joke that I have a death wish, but I just call it living life to the fullest. Well, that philosophy finally caught up with me 3 weeks ago when I was attempting to climb a particularly challenging route at the local climbing gym. I was about 20 feet up when my grip failed on an overhang. The safety rope should have caught me, but somehow the anchor point gave way. I fell hard onto the crash mats below, but not before bouncing off a metal beam on the way down. The result? 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, a concussion, and more bruises than I could count. The paramedics said I was lucky to be alive. So there I was, lying in my hospital bed on the 3rd day of my stay, hooked up to machines that beeped every few seconds. The oxygen mask over my face was the only thing keeping me breathing properly since my lung was still healing. I was drifting in and out of sleep when the door to my room suddenly burst open. In walked this woman who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her hair was a disaster, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had this wild look in her eyes that immediately put me on edge. She walked straight toward my bed with the confidence of someone who owned the place. The woman demanded to know what I was doing in her bed and told me to get out immediately. I blinked hard, thinking maybe the pain medication was making me hallucinate, but no, she was real and apparently serious. I stammered out an apology and tried to explain that this was actually my bed, assigned to me by the doctor because I was in pretty bad shape. I gestured weakly at all the medical equipment surrounding me, hoping she'd realize how ridiculous her demand was. She completely dismissed my injuries and declared that she didn't care about them. She demanded to be treated first because she had things to do and places to be. The sheer audacity of this woman was mind-blowing. Here I was, barely able to breathe without assistance, and she was acting like I was inconveniencing her by being critically injured. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I understood she was in a hurry, while the doctor had prioritized my treatment because I was in critical condition. That's when things went from weird to terrifying. Without any warning, she reached over and yanked my oxygen mask right off my face. The sudden loss of oxygen hit me like a truck. I started gasping and wheezing, my vision getting blurry around the edges. I desperately told her that what she was doing was wrong, and that the oxygen mask was essential for me right now. She looked at me with this twisted smile on her face, like she was enjoying watching me struggle to breathe. She coldly told me that I didn't need it much and ordered me to get out of her way. But she wasn't done yet. This woman actually started pushing me off the bed, trying to physically remove me from my own hospital bed while I was in critical condition. My injuries made it impossible to fight back properly. Every movement sent sharp pains through my ribs, and without the oxygen mask, I was getting weaker by the second. I thought I was going to hit the floor when suddenly a voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Johnson had arrived and demanded to know what on earth she thought she was doing. Thank God for Dr. Johnson. He was my attending physician and had been taking care of me since I arrived. The man was a saint, always checking on me and making sure I was comfortable. Karen insisted that she demanded to be treated first, claiming it was her turn and that I could wait. Dr. Johnson told her that I was in critical condition and required immediate attention. He explained that her case was not urgent and suggested she wait her turn like everyone else. You could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. Dr. Johnson quickly helped me back onto the bed and replaced my oxygen mask. I took several deep breaths, feeling the relief wash over me when my oxygen levels stabilized. But this woman was far from finished. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, accusing the hospital staff of discrimination and threatening to sue everyone in sight. Her voice was so loud that it brought nurses running from other rooms to see what was happening. The head nurse took one look at the situation and immediately called security. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived at my room. The first guard told her that they were going to need her to calm down and leave me alone. She absolutely lost it and declared that she would not be treated like a criminal. She demanded to speak to their supervisor. The second guard told her that she was under arrest for assaulting a patient and causing a disturbance. Her jaw dropped and for a split second, she looked genuinely shocked that there would be results for her actions. But then she completely lost it. When the guards approached her with handcuffs, she turned into something out of a horror movie. She started flailing her arms and kicking her legs like a toddler, having a meltdown, except this toddler was a full-grown adult capable of real damage. She screamed that they couldn't arrest her and that she was the victim. She grabbed onto my bedside table, knocking over a pitcher of water and sending medical supplies flying everywhere. The guards had to call for backup because she was thrashing around so violently. The first guard tried to calm her down, politely telling her to cooperate and explaining that they were just doing their job. She yelled back that they needed to get their hands off her and that she knew her rights. She actually tried to bite one of the guards. I'm not kidding. This woman attempted to bite a security officer like some kind of rabid animal. The guards had to use special restraint techniques to get her under control without hurting her. The whole scene was so chaotic that they had to clear other patients from the hallway. Nurses were scrambling to keep everyone safe while this woman continued her rampage. It took 4 security guards to finally get her in handcuffs and escort her out of the hospital. Even when they dragged her away, she was still screaming threats and insults at everyone she passed. I could hear her voice echoing through the corridors long after they'd left my room. Dr. Johnson checked on me and asked if I was okay and whether I needed any additional tests. I told him I thought I was fine, just shaken up, and asked what was wrong with her anyway. He explained that she had come in complaining of a headache and demanded immediate treatment. When they told her it would be a few hours wait, she apparently decided to take matters into her own hands. A few days later, I was finally well enough to be discharged. My lung had healed nicely, and while my ribs were still sore, I was breathing normally again. About a week after I got home, I received a call from a police officer at the local police department. He explained that they were investigating the incident and wanted to know if I would be willing to press charges against the woman. The officer told me they had multiple witnesses and security footage of the entire incident. He also revealed that this woman had actually been arrested several times before for similar behavior. I asked him if this really wasn't her first time doing something like this. He confirmed that it wasn't even close to being her first offense. She had a history of assaulting healthcare workers and causing disturbances in medical facilities. He explained that they'd like to see her face some real results this time. I didn't hesitate. What she did was dangerous and could have seriously hurt me or someone else. I agreed to press charges and provided my statement to the police. The case went to court about 2 months later. The hospital's security footage was crystal clear, showing her ripping off my oxygen mask and trying to push me out of bed. Multiple staff members testified about her violent behavior. When the verdict came down, she was found guilty on multiple charges including assault, battery, and disturbing the peace. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail and ordered her to attend anger management classes for a full year. Even at her sentencing, she continued to insist that the whole thing was ridiculous and that she was the one who needed medical attention. She was still trying to play the victim. The judge actually increased her sentence by an additional month because of her continued disruptive behavior in the courtroom. I made a full recovery and I'm back to my adventurous lifestyle. I've even returned to rock climbing, though I'm a bit more careful about checking my equipment now. I was in my final year of college studying mechanical engineering when I landed what I thought would be a great part-time job at a small manufacturing company. The pay was decent, and I figured working in production would give me real-world experience before I graduated. What I didn't expect was to walk into a workplace dominated by one of the most toxic people I've ever encountered. The company was pretty small, just 10 employees total, including the owner. It specialized in some kind of proprietary manufacturing process that the owner had invented. He was this brilliant engineer who could design incredible machines but had zero people skills. That's where my problems began. The production team leader was this guy who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a prison yard. He stood about 6'4" when he bothered to stand up straight, had a face tattoo, and wore a different Monster Energy drink hat every day of the week. He carried around a chain wallet like it was still 1995 and clearly spent more time at the gym than he ever did in a classroom, which made sense since he was a high school dropout. Karen wasn't the problem here. The problem was this walking stereotype who made everyone's life miserable just because he could. He got the team leader position purely through seniority, not because he was good at anything except intimidating people. His favorite target was me. He'd call me schoolboy every chance he got, like it was some kind of insult. He would ask me if I was still wasting my time with college nonsense, and I'd politely tell him I was just trying to learn. Then he'd launch into his usual rant about how education was a scam and smart people were actually dumb. He'd insist that only losers went to college. This was basically our daily routine. He'd launch into these rants about how book learning was worthless and how real men learned things with their hands. Meanwhile, he couldn't figure out why the machines kept breaking down or why we were always running out of materials. The other 8 employees were just fed up with him. They'd pull me aside and complain about how he was ruining the workplace, but nobody wanted to confront him directly. The guy was genuinely intimidating and he knew it. He'd get right up in people's faces, use his size to make them uncomfortable, and basically rule through fear. The owner should have dealt with this months ago, but he was completely useless when it came to managing people. Every time someone tried to complain about the team leader, he'd just shrug and say the guy knew the production process. What he really meant was that he was too scared to fire him. About a month into the job, my new favorite person decided I was going to be responsible for taking inventory every 2 weeks. This was normally a 3-person job, but I got to do it alone because he said I needed to earn my place or some other nonsense. He told me I was on inventory duty from now on, and when I pointed out that it was usually done by multiple people, he just said I was young and could handle it. He acted like he was doing me some kind of favor by giving me all the extra work. These inventory sessions kept me at work until well after midnight, going through every single item in the warehouse with a clipboard and a pen. The only upside was the overtime pay and the fact that the building was empty and quiet once everyone else went home. I put up with this routine for 6 months, counting every screw, bolt, and piece of raw material while he went home at 5 like everyone else. But I had a goal. I was grinding through my final semester, and I knew there was a position opening up in the product design office. That's what I really wanted, to work with the engineering side of things, not just move boxes around. When I finally graduated and got promoted to the design office, I thought my problems were over. 3 days into my new position, I was settling into my desk when he showed up at my door. He told me I was still doing inventory that night, calling me schoolboy like always. I reminded him that I didn't work in the warehouse anymore and was now in product design. He said he didn't care where I worked and that I was still doing inventory, I tried to explain that it didn't make sense since I wasn't part of the production team anymore, but that's when he really lost it. He stepped right into my personal space, towering over me, and started cursing me out. He made it very clear that he considered himself dangerous and that I should be afraid of him. Maybe I should have stood my ground, but I was caught off guard. I agreed to do the inventory that night, but I was furious. For 6 months, I've been doing a job that should have taken 3 people, and now he expected me to keep doing it even after I had been promoted out of his department. But here's the thing, I wasn't the same scared college kid who'd started there 6 months ago. I'd been watching this guy operate and I'd figured out his weakness. He was all intimidation and no substance. He couldn't read very well, couldn't do basic math, and definitely couldn't handle being made to look stupid. My new office co-workers had already made it clear they didn't like him either. They'd been dealing with his behavior for years, and they were just fed up. I figured if he tried anything physical, they'd back me up. So I came up with a plan. When I did the inventory that night, I wrote everything down in Roman numerals instead of regular numbers. Every box, every part, every measurement, all in Roman numerals. If he wanted to treat me like some kind of educated idiot, I'd show him exactly what education could do. I wasn't there the next morning when he found the clipboard, but I heard all about it from multiple witnesses. Apparently, he took one look at the inventory sheet and completely lost his mind. He started screaming about how I was trying to make him look stupid, then began pulling everything off the shelves and throwing it around the warehouse. The noise was so loud that people in the office could hear it. When they went to check on him, they found him in the middle of a complete meltdown surrounded by a scattered inventory and broken boxes. Someone called the police. By the time I got to work, there were already cop cars in the parking lot. The officers talked him down and got him to leave peacefully, but the damage was done. The owner finally grew a spine and fired him on the spot. They also got a restraining order that banned him from coming anywhere near the building or any of the employees. After he was gone, we promoted one of the other production workers to team leader. Suddenly, everything started working better. The machines ran more efficiently, the products came out cleaner, and all those supply problems we'd been having disappeared. Turns out most of our issues weren't actually problems with suppliers or equipment, they were just him being lazy and incompetent. The guy who replaced him found boxes of materials that had been sitting in the wrong place for months. He discovered that several machines had been running inefficiently because basic maintenance wasn't being done. The whole operation improved almost overnight. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.